Chapter 6. The Rehearsal. A second later, Maurice gestured toward the booth as a person walked to it and pulled back the red curtain. Pfund immediately called down, "Please show us your face before you go in." The man turned, looked up, waved a cheerful greeting, and then entered the booth. Frida pulled out a sheaf of papers, studied the first one, and said, "The likeness is amazing. Compared to this photo, who could possibly know that isn't Phil Smith?" Pfund's phone dinged. He raised it and said, "One vote for secession." A moment later, it dinged again, and he said, "And one vote for our next governor of Colorado." As the man walked away, a woman entered the maze, turned toward the platform, stared, entered the booth, and voted. Pfund's phone dinged twice, and as she walked away, Frida said, My, look at this photo, a perfect likeness for Jane Shapiro." We watched for 15 minutes as 18 people voted, and Frida said, "That's all we requested. The likenesses are amazing. As long as our friends are not pressed to speak to a human who believes their friend is his next-door neighbor, voting will go without a hitch." Pfund said, "We expect a flawless operation. I have a question for all of you. How many of our friends participated in this rehearsal?" "Well, 18, of course," Frida said. "Bad guess," Pfund replied. "Only 3. Frida and Milkman said together, "What? How's that possible?" Pfund replied in a triumphant tone, "I have trained our friends to change quickly. I've drawn on their capability, motivated them, and tested their endurance. This preparation ensures our plan will succeed. Please bear with me for a moment. I believe you all know that our dear Professor Barclay has perfected a 3-day cloning process, and we intend to have 1,000 new friends before the election starts. As you've seen, each of our 3 friends just voted 6 times in 15 minutes. Let's imagine our operation faces obstacles, things we didn't anticipate, such as we can't position our changing rooms for the clones close to the voting stations as we did just here. Let's say that instead of 6, they can vote only 5 times in 15 minutes. That's 20 votes per hour per friend. Now, the government has mandated that voting days be 14 hours long and that voting takes place over a 2-week period, 14 days. If you multiply 20 votes per hour times 14 hours times 14 days, you'll see that each friend can vote 3,920 times. That means our soon-to-be 1,000 friends can vote 3,920,000 times. That's nearly 1 million voters in each of our 4 states. It's far, far more than we need. If for some unimagined reason we are less efficient in voting, or perhaps we reduce our numbers of friends by, say, 50%, we still have 500,000 new votes per state, double the amount Frida believes we'll need to pass the secession proposals and elect our empire-friendly governors. "Brilliant, simply brilliant," Milkman said, as though he hadn't known it all along. "I am getting excited about our coming victory. In fact, I'm starting to feel like a head of state. President of the Rocky Mountain Empire." That title has a nice ring, don't you think? And when this plan is executed, you can all expect fat bonuses from me. But before we get carried away, Mr. Pfund, I'm sure you would never do this, but I want to make sure you didn't pick 3 of your best friends to do these impersonations. Please bring out the entire first batch of 60 friends. I want to inspect them all." Of course, Mr. President. Give me only a minute, Flint replied, streaking down the steps of the platform and out of sight of the camera. Amerigo and I looked at each other, flabbergasted. They could actually pull this thing off, Amher said. The time for action is coming soon. We gotta look sharp. Lolabelle said, and right now, I've got to give another heads up to my friend downtown. Before I could ask what she meant, Lolabelle stepped from the car and pulled out her phone. A minute later, Amher's phone screen showed Fun bounding back onto the platform as a line of men and women began filing to the maze and positioning themselves near the voting booth. Frida watched intently and commented, Mr. President, isn't this just amazing? Yes, he replied, as enthusiastic as a child in a candy store. Our Mr. Fun and Professor Barclay have performed admirably. It's extraordinary what just a small team can achieve when it's aided by advanced technology. Frida continued, I'm just astonished. Each of their faces could easily be a face we saw on Denver streets this morning. Fun said, You shouldn't be astonished at that, because last night I showed our friends a video I took yesterday in Boulder of people passing me on the Pearl Street Mall. I said each friend should pick one that made an impression on them and wear it for you today. Even more astonishing, Frida commented. But look at that one over there. It looks like a kid. Sorry, but he wouldn't be allowed to vote, she said jokingly. Even sitting in the car, we could tell it wasn't a joke to Fund. He stiffened and then leaned over the platform's railing. He stared intently at the shapeshifter Frida had pointed out and coldly instructed Maurice, Go fetch that one and bring it here. Maurice jogged down, grabbed the shapeshifter Fund had pointed to, and dragged him up the stairs. Fund grabbed the shapeshifter's shoulders, shook it, positioned it along the railing, and stepped back. Its image nearly filled our screen. The face was Leo's. Chapter 7. Pandemonium. Fun shouted, That face didn't pass me on the street last night. I know that face. It must have been present right here after I left for the hotel. It means trouble. Mr. President, you must leave immediately. He motioned to Maurice to hurry. And Frida, you've got to help me rescue our first crop of friends and transport them to a safe place. The professor will have his hands full birthing the new crop. Don't worry. Even if we can't salvage this crop, our lab in the mountains will provide all the friends we need to win the elections. Amerigo said, Buckle up, everyone. It's showtime. And the black car shot out from its hiding place with dirt and dust spewing behind. It crossed the road and Amher positioned it to block the parking entrance. 4 doors flew open at the same time, and 4 sets of legs ran for the maze. Lolabelle stayed behind and leaned on the car as she phoned the Boulder police. Chief, I confirm it's time for your cleanup action. Bring a squad and a couple of horsemen with lariats if you can. The 4 of us sprinted through the empty maze and around the corner of the white building. I saw a pickup truck speeding away on a dirt road, trailing a huge plume of dust. It must have reached the main highway because the dust stopped. We didn't yet know who was in the truck, but I told Amher that I'd take off after it in his black car. He said, Hey, don't bother. I know where they're going. Amerigo always knows something that nobody else does. It's been that way all our lives. So I let it go and headed into the white building. Frida was there, right in my path. I pointed at her and told her to stay there while I looked further into the room. Then I saw another Frida, and another. The building was full of Fridas milling around. I didn't know what to do, so I yelled for them to stand still. They obeyed. Lolabelle stuck her head in the door, and Snap arrived behind her. Snap ran into the middle of the room, wagging her tail, and she jumped up and pawed one of the Fridas. "Oh, don't miss my clothes!" Frida snapped at Snap, and I snapped her wrists with a pair of handcuffs. Lolabelle said she'd take care of Frida and pointed me outside and toward the far side of the building. Emmer had cornered Maurice, and Leo was chasing Milkman through a small field and toward the front parking lot. Maurice pulled out a knife and lunged at Emmer. Uh-oh, big mistake. Emmer grabbed his extended wrist, twisted his arm in a flash, and gave out a popping sound. Emmer let him drop to the ground and took off after Leo and Milkman. I turned, saw Lolabelle holding Frida, but also saw a flood of Fridas streaming from the white building and out onto the prairie behind. Then I noticed a second white building. It was a low, long, recently constructed building. Expecting to find the professor, I ducked my head and entered. Nobody was there. Just long rows of aluminum tubs the size of bathtubs. I looked in the nearest and saw what looked like a cross between a beaver with 2 big front teeth and a goat with 4 hooved legs. It was wrapped tightly in what might have been gauze and covered with a liquid denser than water and slightly yellow. I jogged the length of the room and counted 30 tubs in a row. 2 rows were filled with these creatures, and 2 other rows were half full of liquid but otherwise empty. This was industrial-scale cloning. I sprinted back, saw Rookie handcuffing Maurice to a tree, waved for him to join me, and we ran toward the parking lot. We stopped in our tracks, and it was because we saw Leo smiling at us over his shoulder. He was holding the president of the Rocky Mountain Empire in a vice-like headlock on the hood of his car. Lolabelle watched from a few steps away, holding Frida behind her collar, by the collar. Amerigo shot toward us in his black car and stopped in a cloud of dust. "Get in," he said. "Leo and Lolabelle have things under control here. The police are coming, and these thugs and a couple of cowboys are on their way to corral the shapeshifters. They're running wild out there. Lolabelle has the university's bio lab coming, too. They'll deal with the clones and the next generation of them." Chapter 8. Heading for the Hills. I leapt into the front seat, and Rook shared the back with Snap. We sped down the highway for only about 2 miles when Emmer turned east. You know the mountains are in the other direction, don't you?" Rookie commented drolly. "Yep, but here's the thing. I could turn this puppy into an airplane right here on the highway, but I prefer to do it at an out-of-the-way place so other drivers don't get distracted and cause accidents. The local airport's just over there." In barely a minute, we were parked in a flight staging area on the side of a hangar at the Boulder County Airport, and we were lifting off. "Leo told me you did this back in New York City," Rookie said, "but I'm glad for the first-hand experience." "Very cool vehicle, Uncle Amerigo," Emmer said. "Traveling to Breckenridge will take a lot of gas in this puppy, so don't judge me on fuel efficiency today. I want to surprise the bad guys by arriving before they do." I asked him where we were going, and he replied, "Well, after you said you wanted to climb Mount Evans while you were here, I searched for nearby mountain huts where we might sleep the night before. When I checked the 10th Mountain Division's reservation list, I noticed Francie's hut in Breckenridge had been taken by one party for 2 whole months, ending the day after the election. The dudes we're after said they had a mountain laboratory, and I'm betting it's Francie's. I know you guys remember the place. Lots of bunk space there and all." Rookie said, "For sure, I love that place. But gee, what if you're wrong about them being the ones who reserved it? We'll have lost Fund and the professor." Checking up on my homework, eh, Rook? I guess you'll make a good prof like your father," he said, turning to Rookie with a smile. "Well, I didn't mention that I have friends with satellites. When I asked them to zoom in on Francie's, they saw a guy with a white coat walking in and out of 2 camouflage tents." Does that give you confidence? Sure does. I want Fun so bad I could spit. After a pause, Rookie went on. And I've got to say, Uncle Amerigo, flying above the road is a lot more fun than being down there in traffic. Oh, and I've never seen you land this craft. Where are you planning to land? Amerigo said, do you remember where we saw those two moose in that small field beyond the stream above the hut? Rookie nodded. A short time later, we noticed Lake Dillon below, where Leo and he had fought the Spirodrilla daisies. Then Maggie Pond appeared where he'd fished near Pipsy's condo. And only a minute later, Amber descended and brought the car down on a level spot in the field's tall grass. I'm glad there's no moose around here to greet us, he said. And before opening his door, he added, for a moment I thought about hovering over the hut before we landed, but I decided to skip that. There's no cell phone reception up here, so if there's a guard, he wouldn't have been alerted that we're onto them. And I didn't want to do Fun's work for him. We three and Snap hopped the stream and made our way to the hut. We saw nobody but heard chopping from around back near where Leo and Rookie had hauled water from the stream when we visited the previous year. Amber waved Rookie and me to stay on the side of the hut with Snap. He went to the corner, glanced around it, picked up a stone and tossed it into the brush toward the stream. He glanced around the corner again, was gone in a flash, and then called out, you can come around now. A guy in a green t-shirt and blue jeans was on the ground, his hand secured behind him with a nylon tie and his mouth filled with Amber's bandana. Rookie, send Snap inside. She'll let us know if someone else is in there. We bundled the hapless accomplice into the firewood room in the basement, mounted the stairs to the dining room, and found Snap sunning herself by a window in the dining room. Let's check the place for our friends, Amber said. We checked the back room and the upstairs bunk rooms. They looked ready to house the Empire's friends, and new locks had been installed. We walked down the hill together, checked the sauna shed, found that it too was ready to receive friends, and continued to the two camouflaged military tents the satellite had spied. They were huge. We peered into the first one and saw over 100 aluminum tubs and 2 voting booths, each similar but slightly different from the one in Boulder. The second tent was configured the same, but with only 1 voting booth. I checked my watch, calculated that Fund and the professor could arrive in as little as 15 minutes, and asked Amerigo about his plan. He said, I'm guessing they'll park their truck right over there. The prof will want to check on his friends, but Fun will probably head to the hut. We'll lock the back door and expect him to enter from the front deck. With luck, he'll go down easy and we'll be done here, except for taking care of their yet-to-be-born friends. We walked up the hill, took a short flight of stairs to the hut's deck, scoped out possible hiding spots, and decided Amber would cache himself in the dining room inside, while Rook and I would position ourselves outside behind fir trees near the deck stairs. We each filled a tin coffee mug full of water and settled in to wait. It took a long 20 minutes before we heard a truck roar in the distance and then spew gravel as it made the final climb toward the hut. The engine stopped. 2 doors slammed. We heard nothing for 5 minutes, and then from the distance, Hey, Sheldon, where are you? Rook and I watched Fun walk up the slope through the long grass toward the hut. He hopped up the slope in front of the deck, hesitated, and took a careful 360-degree look around. He was within 2 meters of us, but the dense fir trees hid us well. Then he turned and mounted the stairs to the deck. He peered into the window, craned his neck to check under the picnic table on the far side of the deck, and returned to peer into the windows again. He reached for the Hut's door handle, but quickly turned and vaulted off the deck's railing, landing like a cat. Rookie took the opportunity to scamper to the hut's wall, near the corner, a meter from the stairs, and he hid himself there. Fund hunkered beneath the deck, waiting, watching, and listening for several minutes. He shook his head, breathed deeply, rose to full height, looked warily around again, called out, "Sheldon!" and jogged up the slope toward the stairs. Rook stepped around the corner and onto the bottom step in the seconds Fund was looking down as he mounted the slope. Fund saw two legs, looked up, and Rookie delivered a wicked uppercut to Fund's jaw, knocking him head over heels down the slope. Rook dashed down to pummel him, but Fund saw him coming and rolled further down the hill. Emmer must have heard Fund's grunt when Rookie whacked him because he flew out the door with Snap right behind. Rook was dashing after Fund and I was following behind. Emmer called out, "You guys take care of Fund and I'll secure the prof." Chapter 9. An Uphill Battle. If you ever chased a man running for his life or running to avoid a jail sentence, you'll know it can be a steeplechase. Fund raced up the steep, rocky path toward Crystal Lake. We were about 20 meters behind him, and I figured that, being a smoker, he'd slow down at any minute. Try to fight, or throw a rock or a log at us, but not so. The Swiss mountain man had stamina, and he must have thought his best chance of escape was to simply outrun us and hide out in the wilderness. Rookie called him a dirty slime and shouted out every crude name you can imagine. But as time went on, Rook saved his breath. He needed it because we were above 11,000 feet, giving it all we had and still not gaining ground. Fund ran for nearly an hour and we reached Crystal Lake. Rook told me later that he knew the terrain because he navigated it with Emmer and Pipsy the previous summer. He'd known of a shortcut, but he didn't take it for fear of losing sight of Fund. We saw Fund stop at the lake and look back. When he saw us less than 50 meters away, he took off on a switchback trail toward a ridge that I knew hid a stream in a valley far above us. As we jogged behind him, a crack of thunder rang out. It bounced from Mount Helen to Father Dyer Peak and rumbled down the slope from Crystal Peak at us. As the waves of that single thundercrack reverberated repeatedly, I asked myself if we were getting in over our heads. Rookie and I stayed the same 50 meters behind Fund as we climbed the switchbacks. Several times Fund pushed boulders down and sent us small scree avalanches, but we pushed forward. At the top of the ridge, an alpine meadow opened up and a stream flowed next to the path. Fund must have stopped for water because he dropped out of sight for a moment, and when he reappeared, we were within 20 meters of him. Rook shouted, "You're finished now, you disgusting scum!" But he wasn't finished. He stayed ahead of us while roiling black clouds moved in. We reached the boulder field at the base of Crystal Peak. It's a place I had climbed before with Pipsy. The boulders are huge, some the size of small cars. Running over them wasn't possible. Now we scrambled. We passed an old miner's cabin, and Crystal Peak loomed ahead of us. Only boulders and Fund separated us from it. The moment of confrontation would soon be at hand. I don't know what Rookie was thinking, but I was worried that confrontation would be deadly. But then, the world changed. Within seconds, it seemed we'd reached the end of days. Lightning burst from 3 points on the ridge. Deafening thunder cracked immediately. The scent of ozone filled the air. The valley filled with swirling black clouds. Icy rain pellets viciously slammed into our faces, our heads, our shoulders. It was like being under an enormous waterfall. Fund must have been pelted too, but we couldn't see him. The rain was so intense we could barely see the boulders we stood on. We couldn't safely move forward or back. The rock had become as slippery as ice and as dangerous. Rook and I huddled at the edge of a huge boulder for protection from the wind and the raindrops that struck us like rubber bullets. Lightning blazed again and thunder cracked and reverberated. Survive. Only that mattered. Head down. Head down, I thought. Cover your eyes. Don't move. Don't slip. Nature's elements were overwhelming. I needed to get Rook and myself to safety. Capturing Fun wasn't worth our lives. The sky lightened for a brief moment and I spotted the miner's cabin. I tugged Rookie's arm and told him our priority had to be to protect ourselves. The cabin was only 10 meters back, but each meter had been hard won, and this decision would likely mean losing Funt. Rookie hated the logic, but accepted that it had to dominate emotion at this moment. Rain beating on the cabin's roof almost deafened us, but it protected us, and the storm eventually abated. Before we headed down, we scanned the slope and ridge for anything moving. We saw nothing. We advanced and made a token search where we'd last seen Funt, but then we packed it in. The hike back to Francie's took longer than we expected. It took longer because steep parts of the path had been washed out by the storm. No doubt, the trip also felt longer because we knew we had arrived empty-handed. Snap ran out to greet us. We recounted the chase to Ammer, and my brother, he chased away our guilt. No big deal about Fund. He wasn't the organizer. Look, avoiding a second American Civil War and saving the country, that's not a bad day's work. I'm just glad you didn't get fried like bacon up there. I still remember the time Gally and I were caught out in the open during a lightning storm up on Mount Democrat, and I shiver to remember the electricity dancing and popping as we hunkered low to the ground. I reached Leo with my satellite, guys, and he says Milkman is in custody and the mess at the fun park is cleaned up. Took hours for the cowboys to chase down all those shapeshifters. Leo quickly knocked down some of them with Rookie's gadget that he'd adapted, and the cowboys had no problem lassoing the rest of the two-legged ones, but many had reverted to their natural state, and those buck-toothed goats were quick on their feet and hard for the cowboys to get a rope around. Now the state police, they'll be making it up here soon. I tied up our Professor Barclay and put him in the wood storage room there with Fun's friend Sheldon and the two others. I shook my head and I said, "Huh? 2 others? Oh, yeah. Remember the 2 workmen who set up the voting booth down there in Boulder? Well, they'd come up in the back of the truck. They were part-time workmen, but full-time thugs. And they were working for Milkman, and they were just as nasty as Maurice. They jumped me, but I took care of them." Emmer said this, waving his wrist as if it were nothing worth discussing. The police said they'd call in the same university team that handled the Spire drill of daisies for you guys. So, well, guys, we're free to head back to Boulder as soon as they arrive. Chapter 10. Heading Home. At night, Lola Bell made a celebratory strawberry shortcake for dessert, and we ate it on their back deck under balmy Boulder skies. Ammer asked if I wanted to climb Mount Evans in the morning, but I decided to give it up. As the rain pelted the Crystal Peak cabin's tin roof, a family swimming and canoeing outing in the Pyrenees had come to seem a much better use of a couple of free days. I also figured that rewards were due to Leo and Rookie. Hey, how many people do you know who've slapped a headlock on an evil dude like the traitorous Rocky Mountain Empire president, or slammed an evil dude like Fun with an uppercut? I figured the best reward for them would be a classroom time, since, the pandemic had closed schools for so long. My climbing on Mount Evans could just wait. And beside, I'd had enough scary mountain experiences today to last a while. I thank Lullabelle for bringing Snap and solving my dilemma of picking the real Frida out of the 60 lookalikes, and that led Ammer to ask Leo how he felt about seeing his own face on an ET. Leo said, "Holy moly, Uncle Amerigo, it really got me for a while. Like, you think you know who you are, and you think you're unique, and then you see your own face on top of the neck of a strange being, and it's on the screen of your uncle's car? But, hey, we all knew my face was there because one of the shapeshifters had seen me looking in their windows last night. We jumped into action just then, but I've reflected since, and I realized it wasn't about me. It was about seeing past the surface of situations or people. You know, seeing their real colors. And when all those Fridas ran across the prairie and some of them changed shape, well, that really rammed it home." Ammer said, "Bravo, Leo, for pulling an important lesson out of that mess." He turned to Rookie and asked, "Hey, how did you feel when you smacked your nemesis, Fund?" And Rookie said, "In the moment, it felt so satisfying, Uncle Amerigo. I was full of rage and focused on stopping his evil plan. But as Pops and I chased him, I realized I had also just wanted to hurt him. That seemed justified at first, but while we ran, I realized I had sunk to his level, the level he'd been at when we first encountered him in Switzerland, and he wanted to hurt people at the WHO. The thought of living at Fund's level makes me feel pretty low, and it'll take me a while to work my way through it." The next afternoon, Ammer and Lolabelle drove the three of us to the Denver airport for our flight home. We shared hugs and thanks all around, and I think each of us five left feeling pleased and grateful. You know, I've loved looking down from airplanes at snowy peaks since I was a kid, and I think I can speak for Leo and Rookie when I say we were wistful as the plane circled over the Rocky Mountains before heading east. But, you know, my own wistfulness went still deeper. Of all the ways the Rocky Mountain Empire gang threatened things I care about, perhaps the worst was their treatment of that first innocent extraterrestrial and their loathsome plan. Cloning the ET, using it and its clones as tools for nefarious purposes, then destroying them. Well, that got to me. If we humans aren't guided by high moral principles, we don't deserve to sit at the top of the animal kingdom. If we don't stand for good, we're just takers, beings who selfishly take what they want because they can. It's wrong to take because you happen to be more clever or stronger than others. As a Blue Marble defender, I find it easier to protect humans from extraterrestrials than to protect humans from themselves. Yep, and so it goes. The end.